Governor Christie and his administration are fast-tracking the rebuilding process after Hurricane Sandy with new elevation regulations. And people either comply or risk huge hikes to their flood insurance premiums. Governor Whitman, is this the right step to be taking at this time before FEMA even weighs in on these guidelines?
I think the governor's done exactly the right thing with this. There is obviously a priority to rebuild for a whole host of reasons. So many people have been displaced, the businesses, the tax revenues we're not going to be getting, the importance of the Jersey Shore for our tourism, our second largest industry. So we want to rebuild, but when you rebuild fast, you can make mistakes. And I was delighted to see the governor be proactive on this to say, we just can't do things in the same way because this is the new normal, unfortunately.
What's your view on this, Governor Florio?
Well, I think it's commendable that the governor, actually, in fact, what he's done is adopt the floodplain maps that FEMA is working on now, which will be ultimately finalized. As a result of changes, there have been some fairly dramatic changes over the last 20 or 30 years. There'll be people finding themselves in the floodplain, and therefore will have to build up. I think the difficulty is the state really doesn't have a whole lot of authority to do these things. Most of these decisions are made at the local level. So we've got to harmonize the local level regulations in terms of building permits and things of that sort with the state intentions to do the right thing.
Well, certainly, you bring it up. The local governments are in the process right now of zoning and planning changes. How do you see the politics in all of this playing out?
Well, the good thing is we have a state plan, and we've had a state plan now for decades. It really started with Governor Kane, Governor Florio continued it, we worked on it, and this administration has worked on it. So they have a blueprint from which to start. And you have a number of the mayors who are recognizing that they can't rebuild the way they had in the past and are already saying that we're going to implement these kinds of improvements, elevation and other things to protect people.
It is going to be a tough process to bring the municipal governments in line with these state regulations and all that we can't even foresee yet, Governor Florio.
Well, the apprehension I think most of us should have is that things will be done at the local level. Issue a building permit for someone to build without an understanding of some consequences of failing to take into account the federal FEMA regulations. The maps that FEMA is going to put in effect are going to be mandatory in terms of insurance. So insurance premiums will go up. Somebody may have had the approval to go vote and build up. And when they build to those specifications at the local level, they'll be out of whack with the regulations at the state level.
What do you think the biggest concern among the people most impacted by Sandy? What are those concerns?
The ability to afford to move back, to rebuild their homes. Can they do it? Can they afford to do it with these new changes? And if not, where do they go? What do they do? Right now, a lot of them would just like to get back in their homes or be in places where there is heat, where they can really rebuild.
There are a lot of things we don't know and can't know at this point. I mean, the assessments have to be done. And the tension between wanting to build quickly and build smartly is going to be a source of great aggravation.
Well, let me ask both of you, as former governors, is the state set up to handle this, the oversight and the implementation, properly?
Probably not at this point. I mean, because the fact is, for example, CAFRA, the coastal development system that we have, provides for an absolute right for someone to build their properties, rebuild them after a storm like this. That may not make any sense. There may be very well areas where you really shouldn't build, and that's going to be the hard thing, when you have to go tell someone they can't rebuild because the floodplain is now over into their area and has changed from the last 20 years or so.
Well, one thing that's put this administration, I think, in a better place than it would have been otherwise is very early on they did a Governor's Institute that was sponsored by Smart Growth America. And what they did is they spent 2 days, they brought the entire cabinet in to talk about what smart growth meant and to try to break down the silos between housing and transportation and all the various departments and agencies and get them thinking together about how this all works with a state plan that will allow for development that can continue and we can continue to live in these places. So they've got that kind of structure and they've at least gotten to the point where they have the mindset of we have to work together.
New Jersey has actually done a couple of good things, the last administration and this administration, on the Energy Master Plan. Has resulted in very, very good things happening. We're good on solar, we can be good on wind. Those types of energy generation systems really help us with the climate change issue as well as providing good energy sources in the future.
Governors Florio and Whitman, thank you very much for sharing your perspectives.
Pleasure.
Thank you.